Hi, I'm Chuck Olenek. I'm a reenactor and a former history teacher, and I used to use living history in the classroom to bring the subject to life for my students. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, so I'm repurposing myself and pursuing history on my own. So right now I'm wallowing in the unnoticed corners of the history of California. Yeah, okay, I'm covering the missions, or I have done that, and the presidios and the assistencias, and I do that in garb. And then I started following the trails of banditos, and also just some areas that just catch my interest. Well, now I'm going to ghost towns, and I found one that's actually only 25 miles from my house in Pomona. So I'm on my way to visit the site of Eldoradoville, and I hope you stick with me on my journey. Glendora Mountain Road, the joys of traffic on it. So while I'm dealing with the traffic to get to Eldoradoville, the California Gold Rush actually starts with a gold rush, no capital letters in it, in 1842, when Francisco Lopez y Arballo ends up in Placerita Canyon and falls asleep beside an oak tree and dreams of floating on a pool of gold. I covered this story when I covered Mission San Fernando Rey de España, and also when I covered the Asistencia San Francisco. And later he ended up, while digging up some wild onions, he found flecks of gold clinging to the onions, and that started a gold rush. And I think there was like $80,000 worth of gold that ended up going to Philadelphia. Now, this is still when California was Mexican territory, and it was Alta California. Well, then, 1848, gold discovered up north, the mother lode. So now we get gold rush with capital letters. But there were still miners that were very interested in the San Gabriels, and they kind of poked around and they panned, and then they started following the trail, or the San Gabriel River and the headwaters of it, and they were going up Azusa Canyon. I'm taking a different route. And that was like 67 miles away from the Placerita site. And that's where we're going to run into the origins of Eldoradoville. Wee downhill and into the canyon. Making a right-hand turn after coming down Glendora Mountain Road, and we're coming up on the site of Eldoradoville. And okay, here we go. Crossing a bridge I don't trust, and wow, here we are. Now we just need to find the campground. Well, evidently this seems to be quite the place. Now we gotta figure out where I'm gonna park and what all I'm gonna see. And that sure looks like the end of the line. So we're here at what used to be Eldoradoville. So this is it. the East Fork of the San Gabriel River. And this is where miners started finding, the phrase that I saw in a newspaper that was quoted in the 1850s was they started finding some color. So there were the traces of gold, and once that got out, more miners started showing up. Well, as more miners are showing up, there had to be general stores open. There had to be, to see to the needs of, getting tools to the miners and supplies. And also what followed were saloons to deal with other needs. And this was actually a pretty lawless area for a while. These were rough mining towns where justice was usually swift and deadly. On March 7th, 1855, the Southern Californian newspaper reported on the East Fork camps, "Last Sunday night was a brisk night for killing. 4 men were shot and killed, and several were wounded in shooting affrays." So it's here on the East Fork of the San Gabriel River, which you can hear in the background, maybe. Mining is taking place. Around 1855, there were reports in the Los Angeles Star that miners were finding some color, which I guess is the terminology for there is some gold up here. And okay, miners are getting basically a few cents a pan. There wasn't really all that much. And then in 1859, there was a big strike that took place, and now suddenly, instead of a few cents a pan, people were making $6 or $7 a day. And so what's going to happen is the Santa Anita Mining Company is going to be hastily organized, and they've got a backing of like $50,000, and they're going to take mining in an entirely different direction up here. The company cut a 4-mile water ditch to their mine and built a hydraulic mining operation to wash gold from the hillsides. But the hydraulic mining operations used a lot of water under high pressure, directing a nozzle which could be moved and aimed as needed to wash away gold-bearing rock and soil. The water and soil were then directed through sluices that separated the heavier gold deposits. It was commercially effective, but it was really destructive to the landscape, and it fouled the water that was going downstream and to those users. A small shanty town quickly sprang up at a bend on the East Fork, and it provided necessities to keep the mining operations churning out their precious flecks of gold. As more prospectors arrived, the rustic settlement became known as Prospect Bar, a boomtown located 4 miles up the East Fork of the San Gabriel River on the north side of East Fork Road, where the Eldoradoville Campground is located at an elevation of 1,866 feet. The successes of Prospect Bar were short-lived, however. On a rainy night in that same November, a ferocious flood ravaged the canyon, destroying the settlement along with the dreams of the settlers. Should have made it a ghost town, right? 4 months later, people are back. Mine owners and laborers and shopkeepers got together, and the Eldorado Mining District ends up getting formed. And there were enough people living in it that in 1860 there were 400 votes that were cast from Eldoradoville in support of Abraham Lincoln in that particular election. Eldoradoville was described by the Star as commencing at the junctions of the waters of the main San Gabriel River and Cattle Canyon Creek, and thence following the course of the main river towards the head and running on both sides of the river between said points and at right angles to the river course. A reporter from the Los Angeles Star noted at the time, a boarding house, 2 or 3 stores, blacksmith shop, butcher shop, etc. Sounds pretty civilized, right? So many people moved up to the East Fork in this gold rush that the Eldorado mining district enacted or created 27 mining laws to bring a bit of law and order. There was a bit of a problem. There was no law and order, and the mining laws pretty much didn't go past the mines themselves, which meant you had a lot of violence and you had a lot of vigilantism. Kerosene was thrown on the fire by the presence of more than 6 saloons that featured gambling and dancing. There were stories of a saloon keeper named John Robb that he either made his real fortune by collecting the gold-filled pouches that often fell from the pockets of his drunken patrons, or he was sluicing gold from the sawdust swept from the saloon floors. For the next 2 years, Eldoradoville was thriving. The Star reported that Wells Fargo and Company was sending more than $15,000 per month in gold shipments out of their Los Angeles branch, the majority of it from the San Gabriel Canyon. The typical mode of production consisted of a team of miners, 10 to 20 men directed by the claim's owner. The technology in use, sluices, long toms, quicksilvers, totally surpassed the traditional pan, and the golden minerals of the East Fork were being worked by water wheels, flumes, and an elaborate system of dams. Things are going pretty good for a couple of years, but then 1862, Eldoradoville is going to meet the same fate as the Prospect Bar. There was this incredible amount of rain that came in, and it flooded the western states in the United States. It flooded British Columbia, and it has a name. Oddly enough, the Great Flood of 1862. It was so bad that mail service had to be halted in Los Angeles for 5 weeks. Okay, here's how it affects our story in Eldoradoville. From Christmas Eve, right, December 24th, until January 18th, non-stop rain. And on the 18th, January 18th, 1862, big wall of water comes down the East Fork, carries everything away. And where it all ended up is on the San Gabriel floodplains down below. So people are carried away, shacks are gone, mining equipment's gone, any of the stuff inside the buildings gone. And there wasn't, there's nothing, there's no remnants of Eldoradoville except a campground, and that got created a lot later. Gold seekers moved on to other areas as strikes occurred at Mount Baldy, Mount San Antonio, to people that are looking at a map, and at Lytle Creek in the East San Gabriels. But some stayed. Hydraulic mining began in the canyon around 1871 and closed down in 1874 due to legal difficulties. Nevertheless, the energy and creativity invested in establishing hydraulic works and the amount of gold extracted by it was tremendous. The 2 major operators each extracted many thousands of dollars per month in gold by hosing down the canyon walls. The East Fork saw a boom through the Great Depression. Eldoradoville became Hooverville, a town of cardboard shacks populated by jobless men trying to make some money by gold panning. The town got washed away in yet another flood in 1938. Along with the town, all of the road was washed away except for a bridge that arches 250 feet above the East Fork Narrows. That's called the Bridge to Nowhere. Profitable lode mining was done on the rugged mountains above the East Fork as well. The largest mine was the Bighorn. The spectacular mill remains in good shape, but recent exploration has begun again in the mine, and the road is fenced and blocking any view of the mill. The mine was discovered in 1895 by Charles Vinson, who was hunting bighorn sheep. During its peak years of 1903 to 1906, $40,000 in gold was extracted, about $100,000 overall. Mining continued sporadically until the early 1940s. Occasionally there was exploratory work being done, and the mine is currently owned by Centurion Gold Limited. That 1940s thing, about people mining, well, it's actually illegal according to the U.S. Forestry Service and the 1928 Mining Act, 1928, but we're talking 1940, to remove minerals from the East Fork, from the San Gabriel River. Of course, that doesn't really stop gold enthusiasts. They come up and they do their thing. Why? Because the law is very rarely enforced. So, not even the campground exists anymore. It's permanently closed. Alright, that's the tale of Eldoradoville. A boom town centered around gold mining in the San Gabriel Mountains along the East Fork of the San Gabriel River. So, it's on to other adventures, other ghost towns, and I hope you stick with me as I continue this journey, which, by the way, it'd be really cool if you subscribe to the channel so that you can follow this. Bye.